Hey, everybody. As Kenny mentioned, I've been working in sales and marketing operations for the last 10 years. And in starting FunnelCake, we're a revenue operations product. So I've gotten to learn the really deep pains inside each revenue generating team that we've spoken to. Talked to hundreds of B2B organizations across North America. And what I've learned is that when your sales reps make statements that make you roll your eyes as an operations or enablement team, they're really trying to tell you that there's something fundamentally wrong about the business. They don't know how, so they say some funny things. Like, I made my SIL target, it's not up to me if the deal closed. Getting to our earlier point that discovery really matters, this is an issue we saw with one of our customers that has about 20 SDRs. They noticed that SDR number 1 was the top of their activity charts. They were doing a huge amount of activities every month. They looked like they were just busy all the time. They were also top of the sales accepted lead charts. They were 110% attainment for the number of sales accepted leads that they needed for the business. So they not only made comp, they also made their accelerator. Now, SDR number 2, she was missing her activity metrics. She had about a third of the activities as SDR number 1. She was also middle of the road with SALs. She was missing her target, getting about 50% of the goal, and because of this, she wasn't getting any incentive-based compensation. But when we talked to the sales reps, we learned that the account executives preferred the leads that were coming from SDR number 2. They had a sense that they were higher quality, that the discovery calls went better. And we decided to look at the numbers a little bit differently. Rather than the activity-based metrics, we looked at how did those SDR-sourced opportunities convert to revenue. And for SDR number 1, they got maybe 1 close-won deal every month out of the deals that they sourced. For SDR number 2, they got about 7 close-won deals per month out of the deals she sourced. It's a difference between 90% of the deals closing and 7. So why are we looking at paying SDR number 1 an accelerator and firing SDR number 2? Based on the metrics we've put in place, they're obviously gearing towards whatever their compensation is going to be, but it's not driving us towards the business goal that we need. So we made a bunch of changes in that business. 50% of SDR compensation is now based on the conversion rate for sales accepted leads turning into revenue, which, getting to the quote from the rep, is a really hard thing to get them to buy into at first until they start seeing those results of their increased compensation. And then the enablement team actually changed all of the outreach strategies that the SDR team was using based on doing lower volume of contacts per SDR, but higher quality touches. And that dramatically changed the ability for the business to turn sales development leads into revenue. The next one, the account executive saying that they are not going to work a deal. The symptoms in the organization is the conversion rate from stage 1 to 2 was incredibly low. They had a ton of open opportunities sitting there, but no one was working them. The sales accepted leads were being cherry picked by the account executives. There were no-show meetings happening where the SDR booked the meeting, no one showed up, no one told the SDR they didn't show up, and so the meeting just sat there forever. And the SDRs had 0 feedback loop from the AEs, so they couldn't actually adjust the types of sales accepted leads they were sending over the fence because no one was giving them feedback. This is one of my favorite things I've ever implemented in Salesforce. We added a service level agreement for the account executives to say whether the meeting happened, where they had to know within 20 minutes after the meeting ended whether the meeting actually happened. We would send them an email where they had 1 click to say whether the meeting happened, whether the meeting was good, or whether the prospect was bad. They also had an option to say whether it was a no-show. If they don't click on that email within 24 hours, their manager gets an email. If they don't click on that email after another 24 hours, their VP of sales gets an email. So they went from having no sense of the quality of the SDR-generated meetings to 100% of the meetings were known whether they happened and whether they were good or bad. You can imagine the powerful insights you can have from that data. Now that we know whether the meeting happened, we put a service level agreement in place for the no-show meetings that automatically reassigns it back to the SDR. If the SDR doesn't rebook the meeting within a week, the opportunity is automatically close lost, and they lose the sales accepted lead status, which automatically affects the SDR's comp. This has a huge set of benefits in making sure that SDRs are getting realistic meetings, meetings that are going to happen, meetings that have the right buyers in the right stage of the buying cycle. Now that the account executives are working the deal, the next thing is they're going to complain about adding data into the CRM. And no one logs data in the CRM. Sales teams usually aren't expected to, or it's just kind of shrugged off that that's what reps don't do. But this makes it impossible for your sales managers to coach you as a sales rep on what you should be doing differently in your deals. If you get recruited to a new organization, the sales team has no idea how to follow up with the deals or even what deals you are working. And it's impossible for marketing and operations teams to do win-loss analysis that are based on facts. So you end up with everybody fighting about their feelings and their anecdotes, which isn't productive for the organization. The fundamental issue with this, though, isn't that sales reps are lazy. It's that they don't see value of using the CRM over logging notes in their email or their notebook or whatever they're doing today. A secondary issue we discovered was that every time the sales reps put an opportunity in the funnel in stage 1, the CEO would look at that deal and say, when's that going to close? When's that going to close? When's that going to close? As a CEO, I have done this. It's a common thing. Here, we changed the way that Salesforce was implemented to focus on helping the reps move deals forward in the funnel. We talked to the top reps in the organization and said, what are the questions you ask buyers at every stage of the funnel? We then took those questions and made those the fields inside Salesforce. It sounds like a really obvious thing, but if you think about something like bench criteria, you might have a checkbox field for budget. That's not really useful for the rep. What's useful for them might be a pick list field saying, what is budget allocated for? And that pick list has options for software only, training only, software and training, or budget is not allocated. There's a huge benefit to this because if you bring on new reps, they know the questions to ask, they know the possible answers to those questions, and they now know how to probe the client because there's suggestions in there that they can start asking questions about. We ended up adding 10 times more fields than there used to be, but we ended up with nearly 100% adoption of the CRM by the reps because now it's easier for them to go in and click 5 little drop-down menus to add in all their notes after a discovery call, rather than typing up an essay for themselves, typing it up in the notes field, having 3 meetings with their manager. It's just streamlined. If you use Salesforce and you haven't used Salesforce Lightning, the sales paths interface is the #1 way to convert everybody over. It lets you pick 5 fields you want to put on each stage of your funnel. And so in this case, it was really easy to say, at discovery, these are the 5 questions that matter. At quoting, these are the 5 questions that matter. At negotiation, these are the 5 questions that matter. And it helps guide you through that path and see what should I be thinking about at every stage of the funnel. We also achieved a miracle by getting the executives to only agree to look at deals that were in stage 3 of the funnel or below. So the reps would start putting in all of their data at the earliest time they engage with the opportunity. To get away from sandbagging, we had to build automation rules that when you filled in specific fields, if you now met the stage 3 criteria, the opportunity actually automatically moved into stage 3. Which gets to, we know the pipeline is a mess, but we're too busy to do anything about it. Everyone knows that time kills all deals, but in this organization, it looked like they had enough pipeline coverage every single month, but the reps kept missing their numbers. And when we looked at all of the deals, they were old, they were really dead, no one was working them. What was worse is that marketing automation was set up to ignore open opportunities because previously in the past, the sales team had requested that that be the action. There were a lot of weird interrelated causes for this issue. In this company, they had won a 24-month deal once, and that became folklore in the business that we have an enterprise sales cycle. We sell things in 2 years. The hard-fought battles are the ones we remember, not the 30 easy deals we won in 4 months. There was a lack of process enforcement by managers because they just didn't know how to do it, because every single stage of the funnel was different. Everyone had their own definition for it. And the reps also held onto opportunities for years at a time. They would keep things open for 3 or 4 years because they're like, well, hey, that account's going to buy from us one day, so I'm going to keep this opportunity open. But it's not a real opportunity. It's a long-term prospect. So here we changed all of their stage definitions and stage names into things that were immediately obvious, like demo scheduled and demo completed. We added entrance and exit service level agreements to each stage so you know what criteria you have to meet to enter a stage. For example, if you want to move to the quote stage, you have to have a product. We used historical sales data to combat folklore. So I mentioned that they thought they had a 24-month sales cycle. It turns out that 95% of all the deals they've won in the past 2 years were between 4 and 8 months old when they were won. Once you give that data to people, it immediately changes their outlook on their own pipeline, on the business, and they're able to have a realistic conversation about things. We give that data to the sales rep every single week to say, these are your opportunities that you're working that have now spent more time in the stage than anything you've ever won. Is this deal real? Are you sure you want to set a new record for the company for the oldest deal we've ever won? When 75% of your pipeline is in that state, that gives you pause to really reflect on whether you have the right pipeline and whether you're working your deals correctly. We also broke the habit of reps using opportunities to manage long-term prospects by adding a pick list on the accounts so that you're able to say things like, this is a long-term account, and any account that has that status, we're going to add a task every 3 months for the rep to follow up. That immediately cleaned up metrics, but it also freed up the automation tools that fed leads to the SDRs to go after those long-term prospects, and it also freed up the marketing automation systems to go after those systems as well. Now, this is a talk about enablement, but these are problems that go across the full funnel. We call that revenue operations at FunnelCake. There's a white paper that you can download here. And I really think if you're going to go to solve these issues, you're hearing these comments from your reps, you really have to take this holistic approach to try to solve things. Otherwise, it's easy to roll your eyes and dismiss what is fundamentally a huge problem in your business that if you solve can lead to tremendous returns. Thank you.
Hey, Marko. Colin from Gene42. Really a big fan of the presentation you did to win Dream Pitch, and I highly recommend everybody look at that presentation. Can you talk about just how you crafted that? I think there's a lot of skill in telling a story, and maybe you could tell a little bit about how you put that together.
So for some context, Dream Pitch was a competition Salesforce held in Toronto a couple of months ago. They picked 3 companies to do a 5-minute on-stage pitch. For that, I worked really closely with our angel investors, mentors, board members. Joseph was a huge help in putting the story together. Really to try to figure out what is a core problem we're trying to solve as a business and how do we communicate that in a way that's non-technical. That's been a really big challenge for me personally. I'm kind of like a watchmaker, and I want to tell you all the intricate little details of how it happens. And it really just came out of like open, honest discussions with external advisors. Salesforce provided a story coach. They also provided a presentation coach, which was the first time I'd ever had those either. So that was a big help. But it was that was a ton of practice, rehearsal, throwing out the script. Yeah.
One more question.
Hi, Marko. Thanks for the presentation. My question is, sometimes the reason why sales is tough is for many reasons. One of them being the factors we get affected by factors outside of the our control. Meaning, for example, it can be collateral from marketing, or it can be like different things. Are you going to incorporate more of those analytics into FunnelCake, like as it goes on with the different information and maybe suggestions in the future?
I think there's a lot of very effective tools for that out there already that are looking at how is content being used in your sales cycle. Joseph's product actually is a really smart one because it can connect into your entire knowledge base, and your reps can ask questions of like, hey, I have this problem. Well, actually, here's a white paper that solves it. So there's a lot of really interesting tools out there. We're more so focused on the process management piece, looking at the complex handoffs and relationships in the funnel.